Hey there, it's a Tuesday, or at least it will be when this video goes up and is published. I'm recording this, as you can see, shortly after I did the watch-along for the Xbox Game Showcase on Sunday, right? I'm out of town for this week, seeing my mom for her birthday, but hey, we got some stuff recorded ahead of time. Hopefully, we'll try to not miss any days or keep that to a minimum when it comes to videos, but nonetheless, today's In Real Life video continues and steams right on along. Now this week, we're taking a general viewer submitted question. Their username should be somewhere on screen in the lower portion of the screen right about now. And they ask, let me bring this up real quick. Do you have a specific policy regarding spoilers you'd like viewers to abide by? You've already done a video on spoiler ethics regarding you spoiling others, I now recall, but not one regarding viewers potentially spoiling you, right? Which, fair enough, yeah, true enough, I didn't even think to talk about this in the other video, I'm not even sure why. But yeah, we play a bunch of narratively focused games on the channel, right? And this, of course, is something that will come up. So, generally speaking, I don't like being spoiled on stuff, right? Generally speaking, I really don't like being spoiled on narrative beats. Not just narrative beats, but potentially unveiled mechanics, right? If I get to a point where there's like, I don't know, something very secret that is very well hidden, and you, for a fact, know, like, oh, this is super easy to miss, or something along those lines, I usually don't mind that, because in the past, every time that this has come up, it has been something that I would have missed otherwise, right? But usually there's an opportunity to sort of go back and sort of revisit it. So if I, you know, for instance, if I've already missed the first chance to notice something, right? Like if I go past, right? Imagine I'm going through a game or whatever, and I go past like a character that I think is just generic set dressing in the world or whatever. After I go past that character the first time, feel free to let me know, right? If you want to let me know, I don't mind either way in that point. But if I have yet to even get to like the area that character is in, and then you let me know, that feels kind of rough on my end, right? Like I kind of dislike that. When it comes to mechanics and stuff, if it's like a mechanic that I'm struggling with or whatever, or like I don't fully understand, or like I will even explicitly say, this is a call for help. Someone save me or whatever. Sure, that's totally something that I would be down for getting. Like, for instance, if time progresses in a quest or whatever, or something happens in a quest or a part of a game that is kind of unlike other parts of it, or unlike what I've been used to in that game up to that point, I don't mind a spoiler or whatever, someone like cluing me in on how that works. Like I said, I tend to enjoy vagaries about it to try and figure it out myself. Right. Generally speaking, I think it's always difficult to sort of nail down what someone else considers a spoiler, right? So if you do want to be super careful in that regard, go for it. I think this will be particularly true when we begin Baldur's Gate 3, which by now, I assume a lot of people who watch this channel have already touched or played Baldur's Gate 3, and I have not. I have miraculously kept myself devoid of pretty much any major narrative beats in, frankly, minor ones, right? All I know is, like, the slew of companions and roughly their gist, because sometimes stuff like that just gets out, right? Like, if you pay attention to games or a specific genre of games, it's very difficult to stay completely, I don't know, untainted in that regard, right? There's just stuff that you hear, right? There's just stuff that enters the zeitgeist of the moment, the sort of like big discourse, and people just talk about it. right? This is something that it's just a fact of life with it. Sometimes you just got to take it or whatever. Sometimes there are legit like trailers and stuff for games that will sort of spoil a big plot beat, right? Certainly we're no stranger to this in like film and television as well, right? How often is there like a major plot beat that's shown there, and then, if you're clever enough or, I don't know, a weird enough person to sort of want to piece things together, some folks can just intuit, like, from one amount of information, like, oh, if this is present in the game, right? Like, if whatever is being hinted at here is present in the game, thus I can kind of intuit something else will happen along these same lines, right? Or it will change your expectations when sort of the people who developed the game didn't want your expectations altered just yet, right? Especially when it comes to like twists and stuff in a game's narrative, or like I said, in a mechanic reveal. They want you to have a certain set expectation and then have it be subverted, right? And that's supposed to be part of the way in which you interact with the game, right? And I feel like the last thing that you want to do in that situation for someone going into it fresh or whatever is to already set them up and be like, yeah, I can't wait until he gets to this part or whatever, right? I can't wait until this comes up. That already puts you on high alert, right? If you see like something like that come in, you're like on high alert, then you're ready for anything to potentially subvert your expectations. And it can also like backfire, right? Wherein normally a normal person going through the game without this foreknowledge wouldn't bat an eye at something, but you can set yourself up for failure and think like, oh, this will be what subverts the expectation. And then it ends up not being the case. And then it kind of sours you on other parts of the game that are actually meant to have been the subversion, It's like I said, it's just a difficult line to walk. I don't really have a good solution for it. So although I do dislike spoilers, at the end of the day, right, I have to accept that on some level, I am making videos on the internet, right? I'm a YouTuber. At some level, there must be some concession from me. And true enough, I do have this concession, and I do just accept it, that like any game that I cover on the channel, I am potentially within risk of like having something spoiled for me, right? I've yet to have anyone do it like maliciously, right? I've yet to have that. But, just people who tune in for a video or whatever and think that, honest mistake, I've been playing whatever game for a long time and they assume that I've gotten to a certain point already, or because they would have just tuned in for a more recent part of the playthrough and not known that I have so far, despite having so many videos within the playthrough, I haven't gotten to a certain point in a certain quest or whatever and found something out. But like I said, there's just no other way around it. Sometimes it just comes up, and I'm grateful enough to have not had anyone sort of maliciously do it. It always seems like sort of more honest mistakes or whatever. And the times when it does happen, it's super duper rare, I find, and it's not like soul crushing or whatever, right? Yeah, for the most part, that's sort of it. Just generally try to take a careful approach to it, unless it's something that truly doesn't matter. But then once again, right, like how do you define what does and doesn't matter to an individual? Because it's very subjective what one person may be about to sort of glom onto with a game or with a narrative, or like I said, with a mechanic reveal. Generally, mechanic reveals or like new items or whatever, those are pretty obvious. Like, but then again, I would say they're pretty obvious that you shouldn't reveal like, oh, halfway through this game, you get a weapon that acts nothing like anything you've ever done before, and it completely recontextualizes half of the levels that you've gone through, right? Something like that could exist in a game. And I feel like at a glance, at least myself, I'd be like, well, of course I'm not going to tell anyone about that because that's such a huge moment when that happens in the game, and it feels amazing, and it feels almost out of nowhere, and yet at the same time it makes so much sense when the game changes on a mechanical level in that way. But at the same time, I can't fault other people who come in and to them, a spoiler of mechanics is not even a spoiler at all, right? There are folks who really don't even care about spoilers, narrative or otherwise. And there are folks who are like, okay, this is... mechanics are over here for the game, and then the story, the narrative is over here, right? Never shall the two meet in some way, right? There are folks who just sort of take them separately. And I can't really fault someone who sort of has the approach in that sense, right? I think the only time where I'm actively, I wouldn't say mad. I don't think I really truly, I'm not an easy person to anger, I guess. But I guess saddened when anytime I would ever truly be saddened is if someone went and did it deliberately or maliciously, right? But even then, I feel like if someone was doing maliciously, then I would think like, well, what a dickhole, what an ass, right? And then just kind of get on with it, right? Because like I said, I've already kind of gotten to this point where games I play on the channel, I'm always willing to accept that, like, yeah, it's entirely possible I could get spoiled on this, right? That's unfortunate, but that, that's just one of the drawbacks of doing this, right? There's a lot of cool stuff in that, you're playing games and all that on the internet, right? That's enjoyable, right? You're choosing your own hours and shit like that, right? But one of the drawbacks is that you kind of run the risk of, if this is something that you really care about, right? If you have made your hobby sort of your income stream, you have to accept that in doing this, at some point, you're fully at risk of having part of the experience kind of spoiled for you, right? So I don't really have a great answer other than, right, like I don't have any hard, fast rules other than to say up to this point, it's been great for the most part. Like I said, there's been some sort of inadvertent ones, nothing malicious. Yeah. I don't really know how to appropriately tackle it other than just like tread very carefully, right? Other than what I've already said here. Like I said, I do consider mechanics to be like a big mechanical reveals and stuff to be part of the experience, part of the learning experience. I do enjoy playing games and struggling at certain points, but if it lasts for longer than a video, me struggling with it or whatever, then so be it. Then like, I don't mind someone coming in and saying like, oh, with this, if you just press your reload key or whatever here, then it actually makes the creatures stop fighting you, and that's intended, right? It's not like an exploit or whatever. I guess things I am hesitant to use and whatnot are stuff like exploits, right? Like, I very deliberately tend to enjoy games, especially when it comes to like, more action-focused ones. I do tend to enjoy turning up the difficulty a little bit, unless it's a game that I'm like super duper unfamiliar with, or it's super duper difficult, right? And I'm not sure I'll be able to handle the challenge, right? Especially when we get into older games where I'm very obviously not meshing with it and it's my first time ever playing it. Sure, there I will tend to have like a lower difficulty setting, like for instance with Baldur's Gate, the 2 original games. That's something that I have like wrung my hands over, is worrying that like, oh, am I going to be able to mesh all right with this? And it is kind of difficult for me to pick up on certain parts of it. Certainly Fallout 1 and 2 were far more easier for me to sort of parse and comprehend how the systems work there. Whereas in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, I find that I struggle more with it, and I have difficulty sort of remembering like, oh, this is the answer to this sort of problem, right? I need to use this sort of dispel magic or breach or whatever against a wizard who has so-and-so, right? Instead, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to run through and throw as much at the wall as I possibly can to get through this issue, right? I kind of have that issue. But otherwise, I do enjoy, like, points of friction, right? This is why it's so difficult with me, at least, is that I do enjoy sort of having moments of friction in the game and trying to figure out ways around them, right? Trying to find out, like, unconventional solutions. For me, that's part of a great joy in video games, is trying to figure out a weird solution. It's why I will very stubbornly sort of maintain, like, for instance, encumbrance in stuff in games. I kind of like having to contend with stuff with that. Even when I'm making a video and I have, I like to do in certain video games, I like to do reading of books and stuff at the end, in-game books. Sometimes I run into issues where I'm carrying large amounts of encumbrance in my inventory just for the fact of I'm making a video. Otherwise, I would stash it away, right? Like I said, this is just more stuff that kind of comes with that territory, that comes with sort of making videos in that way. It's just sort of a concession that I feel I must make because I don't really have a great solution for it. It would be different if, well, even if you streamed it, right? Because there's always going to be someone who is likely to, like, be able to go through the game a lot quicker, right? Yeah, like I said, I just don't know of a perfect solution for it. Sadly enough, right? It's just a matter of sort of being very careful about it and sort of, I don't know. I think certainly the more, right, I'll say this, the more someone is familiar with my videos and my, like, style of play, I think the more likely they are to know sort of like, oh, it's very likely that this guy is going to think that this is a spoiler, thus I'll hold off, right? Like I said, almost every time it's been inadvertent, it's been a spoiler from someone who has written in and they're not, like, a familiar name or whatever, right? It's someone who doesn't fully know, like, my own inner workings, right? Like, people who are regulars for the channel that I notice pop up tend to know what I do and do not consider spoilers, right? I don't know. Like I said, it's just a very difficult line to sort of walk. And like I said, although I do dislike spoilers, I can't hold it against folks who do it, right? The only time I would hold it against you is if you did it maliciously, and like I said, that has not happened yet. I figure at some point it'll happen, right? Who knows when, but so far so good. Yeah, I think that's it as far as spoiling me. Apologies. I really should have covered this in the last, like, my spoiler ethics for trying to avoid spoiling other people. But that ought to do it for now, right? Yeah, that ought be it. All right. As always, you too can write in with a question. I've got an ever-working list that I keep adding to, and I just kind of pick one. Sort of usually more recent or older ones come first. And as I've said before in the past, if it's anything like too overly personal, I probably won't acknowledge it or read it out, right? Obviously, it's just, what can you do? But otherwise, feel free to send them in. I add them to the list every time I want to, like, draw questions or whatever. We totally take them and whatnot. Okay, that ought to do it. Until next time, please take care of each other.